Welcome one and all to another Timpedia game review. Today we're going to be looking at one of the first strategy games I ever played as a gamer, Empire Earth, and its expansion pack, The Art of Conquest. Besides its badass name, why have I remembered it to this day, over 10 years later? Let's find out.
Throughout history, few are given the power to control the destiny of their fellow man. Tribal chieftains and powerful shaman. Admirals and captains. Generals and statesmen. Warriors and tyrants.
Empire Earth was released way back in November of 2001, developed by Stainless Steel Studios and published by Sierra Entertainment. The expansion pack, Art of Conquest, which we'll be talking about later on in the review, was developed by Mad Doc Software and was also published by Sierra in September of 2002. It's sort of a spin-off to the Age of Empires franchise and inspired a few of its own spin-offs that may be covered in later reviews. But now that we've gotten this boring stuff out of the way, let's get on to the story of the game. Unlike many other RTSs that either have no real story or have a completely fictional story, Empire Earth does something rather unique. There are 4 different campaigns in the game, which are all made up of around 8 missions each. 3 of the campaigns are based on actual historical events, while the 4th is the only completely fictional one, which is by far the craziest story of them all. The first campaign is the Greek campaign, which takes the player through huge chunks of early Greek history. Some examples of the first 5 missions are the Trojan War and the start of the Peloponnesian War. The final 3 missions, however, all focus on Alexander the Great, with his rise to power and the battles that extended his empire to the largest it ever reached. The second campaign is the English campaign, taking place in 3 major eras. The first, which is 3 missions long, covers the exploits of William, Duke of Normandy, on his road to becoming King of England. The second 3-mission bunch is based on the 100 Years' War between England and France. Finally, the last 2 missions are based on the battles between Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, and Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of France. The third campaign, with only 7 missions, is the German campaign. The first 4 missions follow German victories in World War I, while the second chunk of 3 missions is based on battles from World War II. The final mission of the campaign is the only truly fictional one out of the first 3 campaigns, where the player carries out the never-enacted Operation Sea Lion, which was the German plan to invade England. In a surprise twist, the U.S. 8th Fleet with the carrier Enterprise somehow shows up in the English Channel, despite the U.S. not being at war with Germany yet when Sea Lion would have been carried out. The final campaign is the Russian campaign, which is definitely the most ridiculous of all of them, and is more one large story than the rest, so all 6 missions tend to flow into each other more than the abrupt shifts in time periods between the levels of the other campaigns. In 2018, a man named Grigor Stoyanovich seizes power in Russia through a coup, renames it Novaya Russia, and goes on to conquer most of Eurasia. At the end of the 3rd mission, Grigor dies, having appointed his robotic bodyguard Grigor II as his successor. In the next mission, during an invasion of China, the Russians discover a Chinese attempt to build a time machine, but luckily stop them from creating a time paradox with its activation. The 5th mission has General Molotov, under orders from Grigor II, invading Cuba to prepare for the eventual invasion of America. However, after you succeed, Grigor orders the extermination of all Cubans to put down a rebellion, which causes Molotov to defect and build a time machine with the Americans. The final mission has Molotov and American agent Molly Ryan go back to the events of the 1st mission. Unfortunately, they miss Grigor as he escapes the Russian capital for a city his followers have taken over. At the same time, Grigor II somehow comes back with a ton of troops and tries to protect Grigor's city from the players' attacks. The campaign ends with both Grigors dead and Molotov and Molly being pulled back to the future with the usual ambiguous ending. Crazy story, like I said, right? The stories in these campaigns aren't too much more than a way to enjoy the various epochs from the game, which we'll talk about later, but they do work fine, giving a mostly accurate telling of a lot of interesting historical battles, and the Russian campaign I think could have made a great TV movie. But now onto the gameplay, the main focus of any RTS. As with most RTSs, you do have to gather a number of resources to build up a base and an army. Compared to many others that just have resources like money or minerals and a special resource, Empire Earth has 5 in total, 6 if you count your population limit, which is always at maximum. You don't have to build any structures to increase it like in many other RTSs. You have food, wood, stone, gold, and iron. All of them are used in building up the numerous units and structures you can produce, and there are many units and buildings. For many of the earlier epochs, there is a rock, paper, scissors format to many of the battles. Swordsmen beat archers, spearmen beat swordsmen, and archers beat spearmen. Many ships work the same way, but in later epochs, this whole concept tends to fall by the wayside, though there are obviously some units that will beat others no matter what, similar to the hard counter when talking about StarCraft. As to the actual unit control, it's pretty much what you would expect if you've played any RTS from the early 2000s, especially if you've played the Age of Empires games. You can upgrade units, build defenses, production buildings, and citizens to gather resources and build the buildings. Unit control has some decent options like attack moving, waypoints, and formations, but nothing incredible beyond those. One disappointing thing is that if you have a massive number of troops, you can only actually control 50 at any given time, meaning you have to create groups and move them together yourself. Also, the groups you move together aren't smart enough to move at the speed of the slowest unit, so your artillery will often get left behind if you move them in step with your infantry and don't pay attention to them while they're on the move. Another awesome gameplay addition is the civilizations that make each player more unique on the battlefield. If you do not have custom civilizations enabled for your game, then every player chooses a civilization such as England, Spain, France, or any other which all have unique bonus sets, meaning there's a good chance at least one of the pre-made civs will probably be in line with your playstyle. With custom civilizations enabled, each player gets 100 civilization points to spend as they will on bonuses for certain unit types or their civilization. An example for units might be increased range or health, while for the civilization you can get bonuses like increased mining rate for a resource or increased population. One good balance so that players cannot create a perfect army is that for every bonus applied to a unit type, the other bonuses for that same type become more expensive than they were before. So to make one unit type very powerful in the game, a player cannot enhance much else in their civilization. The last feature about civilizations is that you can actually create your own civs outside of matches and save them for later to quickly bring up in matches without taking the time to create one from scratch every game you play. Finally, the real claim to fame of Empire Earth, the epochs. There are 14 different epochs in the game, all of which have some degree of different units and capabilities that aren't available in any other. The epochs are prehistoric, stone, copper, bronze, dark, middle, Renaissance, imperial, industrial, World War I, World War II, modern, digital, and nano. As I said, there are changes as you advance between them, but a few examples of big changes are the addition of guns when going from the Middle Age to the Renaissance, or the addition of planes when going from the Industrial Age to World War I. Games can be limited to a single epoch, or for the supremely dedicated, you can go through all of them in a single game. Switching between epochs is the single most resource-intensive thing you can do in the game, as there are numerous units to upgrade to their higher forms when you do advance, and even just getting the technology to advance is impressive, let alone going from the prehistoric age all the way to the nano age. There's even more to gameplay, but if I covered every minute detail, we'd be here for hours, so let's talk about the graphics really quickly. As you can tell from the footage I've shown, the game doesn't look spectacular, but considering that it's over 10 years old, the graphics are certainly functional, and everything is identifiable at a quick glance. Sure, it's no Crysis, but it still looks fine and works great. Now before we finish the review, let's finally talk about the expansion pack, The Art of Conquest. Gameplay-wise, everything functions the same, except in the newest epoch, the Space Age, allowing players to finally go beyond the Nano Age. In the Space Age, players can access spaceships which can be used in the new planet maps, but unfortunately, this is only really a reskin of naval combat with different designs and space instead of water. The other big gameplay change is the addition of special powers in civilization building. In addition to the usual buffs from the vanilla game, now there are very specific new abilities, such as flaming arrows for archers, the ability to conscript civilians, use iron and gold interchangeably, and many, many more. The new powers can really change the game far more than the civilizations from the base game, giving players incredible new options in combat and empire building. The only real game breaker that really unbalances the game here are the priest towers, which are completely broken as they allow you to automatically convert any enemy troops that come within range, and they can push your population beyond your cap limit, giving you infinite troops if the enemy keeps attacking you. As for graphics, the engine is exactly the same, and the new models for the Space Age fit in fine with the older epochs. In a similar fashion to the base game, Art of Conquest comes with 3 new campaigns, 2 of which are historically based, while the third is another ridiculous sci-fi story set in the future. First up is the Roman campaign, which covers 2 main characters, Gaius Marius, one of Rome's first great consuls who gets the first 2 missions, and Julius Caesar, who gets the last 4 missions to show off how awesome he is. The second campaign focuses on the US's battles in the Pacific during World War II, and simply covers a number of the key battles with no real overarching storyline or characters. Finally, the crazy third campaign is the Asian campaign. The first part details the formation of the United Federation of Asian Republics, or UFAR, which takes place just as mankind begins to send expeditions to other planets. The first part ends as the first colonies are established on Mars. Clearly in the future, everyone listens to Schwarzenegger.
Get your ass to Mars.
Anyway, the second part of the campaign deals with the descendants of the UFAR colonists 250 years later fighting for independence from Earth, ending with a Martian counter-invasion of Earth that ends the war and establishes Mars as an independent nation. Do I recommend Empire Earth and the Art of Conquest? Of course I do! The single player provides a great amount of challenge and also a surprising amount of real history, as well as two great sci-fi stories. But the multiplayer is really where the game shines, as you and 7 other friends can have a great time battling it out through eons of history. And best of all, the game is free! That's right, a couple of years ago, a group of modders actually created their own version of the game with some fan-made patches and released it for free, called Empire Earth Unlimited. I'll post a link in the description under the video so you guys can enjoy the game just as much as I do, and perhaps even challenge me to a match sometimes, although we all know how that'll turn out. But either way, go download and enjoy Empire Earth and the Art of Conquest, and I'll catch you guys next time.